Remember the situation where we couldn't count the number of customer segments or the numbers per customer segment that has purchased particular product category simply because the two tables are not related to one another. Remember, we had to come over here to edit this relationship to become bi-directional by changing it to both, so that once the product table is filtering down the orders table can in turn filter back up to the customers table, so that we can do that count and report from these two tables at the same time. So really, having this kind of relationship in your data model is usually not the best of thing, because it's making your model to be larger than you typically would see. But then DAX provides a way for us to activate such kind of relationship. So we can activate this kind of bi-directional relationship, and thanks to the calculate function. So I'm going to return this back to default, change it back to single. Then I'm going to go over to my report view, and I'll try to create a measure that counts customer segment. So let me right click here, new measure, and I'll call this count of customer segments, or number of customer segments equals to a simple count A of the customer segment column, and let's make that 1,000 separator. So now when I create that my report using product category, so I go to the products table and I check the box for category, and I go back to my customers tables and I check the box for number of customers. So if I increase the size here, so increase size, so let's just make this a metrics table so that we can see which particular customer segments are purchasing which product. So if I come back to my field settings here and I just change this to a metrics table and I drag segments over here to column, then I can split the result further. So right now my expectation is to have the number of consumer customers that have ever purchased furniture, the number of corporate customers that have ever purchased furniture, and so on and so forth. So you can see now that it just gave us the same kind of results. Everything is going to remain the same thing because the total number of consumer customers we have is 409, and it can't split it, it can't filter it by category because they are not related. Same thing for corporate and home office. So typically the way to open it up is to go back to the model view and enable a bi-directional filtering between customers and orders, such that if I enable this bi-directional filtering now and I go back, you can see that I can now do the reporting I want. But like I said, that's not best practice, so it's better for you because we're just gonna need this only a couple of times within our report, so we can just as well use a formula to create what we need instead of leaving it standing here forever. Okay, so I'm going to come back here and I'll define a new measure now. So new measure, and I'll call this, let's call this number of customer segment. So let's make this the second one, which should be the correct one. Okay, so for this now I'm going to have to use my helper, which is the calculate function. Calculate wants an expression. My expression is going to be number of customer segments, which I have written that measure earlier, and then I put a comma for my filter. So let me go to the next line for this. So filter, and the second argument basically here wants the kind of filtering that we want, and we are saying that, you know what, we think everything is fine, we just want to kind of like create some kind of relationship that can allow the product table to filter the customer table. So we need the product table to be able to filter the customers table. How that's going to happen is the product table has to filter the orders table first, then let the orders table transfer that filter up to the customers table. Okay, which means we are going to use this function called cross filter. So cross filter, and cross filter has 3 arguments. The first one is the left column, the right column, and the cross filter type. It doesn't really matter which one you specify as left or right here, since we are doing a both cross filtering. So my left column, I can say that should be my customer ID, because that's what I'm using to connect to my orders table. And on the orders table, what's similar to the customer ID on the orders table is the orders customer ID as well. And the cross filter type is where I now specify that it should, filter in both ways, which is bi-directional. So close this for cross filter and close this for the calculate and hit enter. So if I remove this one, number of customer segments, and I replace with the second one, number of customer segment 2, then my reporting should be fine. Now I have activated a bi-directional filtering using the calculate function and the cross filter function.